I learned to put value first. And that has impacted the way I build products, software products. I try to get people to the moment of value recognition. There's probably a better name of this, but it's like when you first feel, oh, this is what it's going to help me with, right? When you first log into a thing and you type your first message or you upload your first file and bam, it does the thing that takes you an hour, you did it in 2 seconds.
Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast, where I unpack and narrate stories of ambitious people who turn obstacles into opportunities. My goal for this podcast is to create a platform to narrate underdog stories and maybe play a small, teeny tiny role in inspiring you. I intend to highlight the underdog mentality and make authentic conversations with people who play the long game, take action with a chip on their shoulder, and convert obstacles into opportunities. Buckle up, as I'll be bringing some authentic founders, VCs, community builders, and content creators who got underestimated their whole lives, and yet they beat all the odds to become insanely successful. Now, today I want to tell you a little bit about our awesome sponsor, Acquire.com. Selling a business is as tough as building a business. As someone who went through this process once, selling my own startup, I know the pain it takes to get to the end zone. This is where our sponsor shines. Imagine this. You're a founder who's built a solid SaaS product, acquired customers, and generating consistent monthly revenue. The problem is you're not growing for whatever reason. Lack of focus, lack of skill, or just plain lack of interest, and you feel stuck. What should you do? The story I'd like to hear is you buckled down, somehow reignited the fire, get past yourself and the cliches, and start working on your business rather than just in the business. You start building an audience, move out of your comfort zone to do sales and marketing, and in 6 months, you triple your revenue. The reality isn't as simple. Situations may be different from every founder facing these crossroads, but too many times, the story ends up being one of inaction and stagnation until the business becomes less valuable or worse, worthless. If you find yourself here or your story is likely headed down a similar road, I offer you a third option. Consider selling your business on Acquire.com. Capitalizing on the value of your time is a smart move. Acquire.com is free to list and they've helped hundreds of founders already. Go to try.acquire.com/Sharath and see for yourself if this is the right option for you. Now, let's get into today's episode. Have you ever wondered that kindness is a superpower? Well, my next guest abused it, and he's one of my favorite people on the whole planet. I had so many incredible calls with him. He's kind of like a mentor slash good friend who helped me in my journey as a SaaS founder. And oh my God, I can talk about this guest for hours. And he's been on this show before, so you can tell how excited I am to bring him back. But he's on a new journey right now, which I'm really excited to unpack. And he's sold companies before for life-changing amount. He's an author for 3 books, amazing books, and he has this course that you can buy on his Linktree. Oh my God, I can go on and on, but without further ado, I want to welcome my very good friend who recently turned 39, Arvid Kahl. Welcome to the show. How are you, Arvid? Welcome back.
Oh man, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for having me back. That tends to be a good sign. I'm really glad to be able to still be able to talk to you, even though we already talked for hours and hours. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really nice.
Absolutely.
Thank you for saying all these kind things about me. It's super appreciated, and we all live in a bubble sometimes where we don't really hear what our actions do. Right. Yes. And how we relate to other people and how other people relate to us. So this is extremely appreciated for somebody who's living in his basement, like
a beautiful basement, I would say.
I took some time and effort to make it nice, but yes, it's still a basement. I think that's something that a lot of founders can probably understand, like the being kind of boxed into your own world. Both intellectually, like only you really care about these things, nobody around you cares about entrepreneurship or SaaS or MRR or whatever, and physically, because you have to focus so much of your time on that work, right? On the product, on marketing, or whatever you need to do. So it's nice to hear this from outside of my own basement. I really appreciate it.
No, I think you're absolutely right on that point, because oftentimes we are so busy hustling, and like you said, we live in our own world. We really don't bother about what we are trying to impact outside.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
we're very busy figuring things out internally, which is very important, right? You have to fix yourself first before you fix someone else, right?
Yes.
You change yourself first before changing someone else. But I do want to also mention something about you, which I kind of steal, replicate, and try to amplify as much as I can, which is really giving a space for other people to you actually open doors for other people to excel, and you put a spotlight. So which I think I've done that before meeting you, but not to the scale you do it, like on a day-to-day basis, not week to week or month to month. You literally do day-to-day basis. You retweet some of the things people share in public, whether the highs or the lows, whatever it is, regardless of your brand and your name. You just don't care about that, where most of the people care a lot about their personal, the space. That's why I think I appreciate you so much, and
Thank you.
I have no boundaries to really appreciate you. I really want, if I can come to Canada and hug you. I think you live still in Canada, right?
Yeah, I'll take it.
We should definitely hang out sometime. But what's okay? Let's start about the small basement. I think last time
Yes.
when you're here, you
Yeah.
had like this big setup of huge monitors.
Yeah.
You're still you just
Yep.
moved into this new house.
That's
I
right.
remember that. And you're setting up the studio, and now
Now
it's
it's done.
it's
Yeah,
professional. You look so good. The lighting is so good. Some of the things that maybe you should recommend me. So how's the process like? What's life outside? Let's talk about, I think everybody talks about building SaaS and
Yeah.
all that. I want to talk about like how's life in general. How are
Yeah.
you feeling these days?
Well,
Any
thank you.
highs, any lows? And I want to talk about your office manager. Let's start with that.
Well, yeah, our office manager is now almost 2 years old. She's a Labrador Retriever, and her name is Biene, which is German for honeybee, because
Nice.
I'm German, and we wanted to bring some Germanness into this Canadian place and for this Canadian dog. So I think that's important, and I really love that you picked Biene as the topic for this, because Biene is something that has very little to do with software or with entrepreneurship.
Yes.
She's a family member, right? She's a dog, she's a companion, she's a pet. She's part of my life beyond the computer. And it's also nice that you bring up all the screens, because right now what I'm looking at you through, as we're recording this, for everybody who's watching, they can probably see this, but the people who are listening, I'm looking into a teleprompter with your face on it. And that's kind of the only screen in front of me at this point. Like I have pushed all my big screens, all my big, LCD fancy 4K Retina screens all into a different space, because in this moment I want to be with you. I don't want to be with my weird like analytics tools that show me fancy graphs, or I don't want to be with my Twitter timeline that just zooms by or whatever. I want to be able to focus on this, on our conversation. And I found, in having moved to Canada and having been in Canada, a Canadian, and living my Canadian life here with the family of my partner, of Danielle, which is the place that we moved to, right, where her family is very easily reached, all the way from Europe, where we had barely any family to ever meet. I found that this has become way more important to me than it ever used to be. And you mentioned that I was almost 40. I think I'm now at a point where my priorities are shifting from doing into being, right? And I know this sounds kind of cheesy, but the idea is my impact on the world is more than the code that I write, or even the books that I write, the articles that I write. They do channel a lot of it, but my impact comes not from the words. It comes from the impact that those words have, right? The relationships that I build through my writing, through my software engineering, and through my public speaking, and all these little things that I do. The thing that actually makes my legacy happen is other people. right? It's my work that helps other people, just like you said, opens the door for them, but they still have to go through that door, and they
Yes.
still have to make their own legacy happen so that mine can also exist. So
Right.
when you mentioned that a lot of people don't do that, I was thinking about instant gratification versus delayed gratification. And I think I'm in the very lucky position to have been gratified already. You talked about the sale of the business, and to have the means to sustain my life from that, plus all the other things that I do. I have a lot of sponsors on my podcast. I have books that sell the courses and whatnot. And there are many revenue sources that I have. I think when I last counted, it was like 16, 17 different sources of revenue that just it makes tax season very interesting. But it's sometimes it's just really small stuff like affiliate links that are still somewhere out there and they're making me a couple $100 a month or whatever, right? Little things that all add up to significant amounts of money. So they're not all equally big, but they are many and they are diverse. So if one breaks away, I'll find another one, or I'm fine with one less. So I diversify in that regard. But the the connection part, where being connected to people, having relationships with people, that has become much more important in my life. Evidencing this, like I'm taking more time to spend with my family. And this basement studio, as much as I love it and as much as I spend time in it, I spent a tiny fraction of time of my full life in this room. In my 20s, I would have been here 24/7. Right?
Yes.
Probably also because I was severely World of Warcraft addicted, that I would have just played games the whole time. But
Right.
I would have made this my life, the center of my life. But
Right.
now, this is the place that I go to work. Like, it literally is a home office. It's not the place in my home where I hang out. This is where I do office work. And that can be many different things. But it has become much more important for me to spend time with my family, both in this house, upstairs, right?
Yeah.
Or with the extended family. We just were hanging out with them like last night until very late, because it's nice to have something to do with people. And I feel this is a shift that I've been experiencing. So when you ask me how I am, I think I'm more present with the people that I'm here for. That's my life. And I try to do the same on Twitter. I try to be more present with people there.
Yes.
So I think presence may be the theme of these couple of years for me.
I love that. I think I see a lot of intentionality. You are always intentional, but I think you're at peace.
Yeah,
I would say
I think so too. Yeah.
You're not chasing anything. I do have a question about what is the Arvid, the close to 40-year-old Arvid. You're still young, by the way.
Yeah.
You're beautiful, you're young, you're energetic. That Arvid, you have so much gas. We all have so much gas left in our tanks, right? And one thing I kind of also going through the photos and moving to this new house. By the way, this is the first episode I'm recording in this new house. As you can see, if you're listening, if you use watching the podcast, I have like so many unboxed,
I love it.
things. So it's all scrappy, which I love. So I didn't change anything for him because he's authentic as so much as me.
Yeah.
One thing I observed is that the scale and everything changes as you grow. Like you said, as we grow, I think it's true that we get little wiser. Our choices are very intentional. Our priorities change. We want to spend more time with the loved ones, and we just choose to not be the own selves that we were before, right? Which is a great way to put it. In this transition, I see a lot of intentionality to your face, but at the same time, I do have this question about, like, what are you, like, what is the grand vision? Like, what is the next 60 years of Arvid? Like, you talk about legacy, which I think is cemented as of now, because you have so many people being impacted by your work. What's the next 60 years like?
Yeah, I think that is something that I ask myself all the time, because it's kind of a graduation, right? When you have nothing, you want a little bit, and then you have a little bit, and you get used to this. It's kind of the hedonic adaptation thing. You want a little bit more, and you get used to that, and you want a little bit more. I try not to fall into this trap too much, because at the scale that I can operate right now, like with having 130 some thousand followers on Twitter and probably 200K by the end of the year, or wherever it goes, right? Like, it feels like you have to do more for more people, because that's just kind of how the multiplicative nature of that math is,
Yep.
I try to actively keep myself from falling into this trap, because I'm noticing one thing with all the other wonderful people that I have kind of grown with over the last couple of years. The ones that have witnessed explosive growth to their audience, they are becoming distant to every single member of the audience. Like, it's just that at the sheer scale of having 200, 500, a million followers, you cannot relate with to individual people anymore. When you start relating to kind of a shadow of a group of people, like an amalgamated average kind of person that you think most people are, or are ish, right? So it's a problem that I see, and I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that people cannot talk to, that they can't have a chat with, that they have to jump through hoops to even have the chance for an audience, like the in the royal court, right? You would go and the king sits on the throne, that kind of stuff. I don't want that, because I hate it when other people do that to me, and I don't want to be that person for other people. So when it comes to scale, when it comes to the size of my legacy, all I really want is to be present in people's journeys, and every now and then give a little push in the right direction. That's all I want. I don't want to do this like for millions. I don't want to do it for 10. I want to do it for however many people feel that they have a vibe with me. Right? And if today nobody would ever follow me again on Twitter, that would be perfectly fine. I do not seek the number. I have the number, and I'm glad that with it come a lot of benefits, obviously, right? Like, I wouldn't have my sponsors, and I wouldn't have my podcast and all the success that I have without a sizable following. But I don't do it for the sake of the number going up. So my legacy is not tied to this. I think my legacy is that every now and then I want to just get a nice message by somebody who I helped a little bit. I set super low expectations for this kind of stuff, because it's super easy to be pleasantly surprised if your expectations are low. So that's kind of how I operate there. But realistically, I want to keep building. I want to keep writing. I want to keep building software businesses, which I've recently started again because I just had to. I felt like it. And I intend to talk to you about this because I think you might find that interesting as somebody who's also building at the same time.
Yes.
I want to be able to go back and forth between being a teacher and being a maker. Maybe that's the legacy. The legacy is this kind of pendulum that swings back and forth between teaching, implementing, learning, teaching, implementing. I call this kind of the learn, teach cycle. As I'm writing my next book about building in public right now, I feel this is one of the core constant patterns that I see when people successfully build in public. They have this, and I think you have this a lot in product development too, right? You get feedback, you incorporate it in your product, you search for new feedback, you learn from that, you incorporate it into your product gets better, you get different feedback, and so on. It's a cycle. And it's the same in building in public. You learn something on your journey, you share it as you go, you get feedback from people, you incorporate that feedback into your journey, and then it does another loop. And between learning and teaching, some people do it constantly all the time. They switch back and forth. I think for me, I'm more of a time boxing kind of person. I need a couple months, a couple years at a thing to be really intensely integrated or have it integrated into my life. And then I switch back. So I think I'm now at this turning point where my writing focus is kind of shifting back into coding. I still write just as much as I still coded while I was writing, but it's kind of, just oscillating between these two extremes. I kind of want to keep doing this until I can't see anything anymore, or until I can't write anymore because I'm shivering all the time or whatever. I don't see any reason to not keep doing this.
See, I think I love the way you put it about contentment, right? You're not chasing the number, which is, I think, probably at your stage, at your level, that's the wisest. That's the wise part I'm talking about, which is once you reach to that number or whatever it is, like you sold a life company for like life-changing amount, there is nothing to be kind of like there to chase. And that is good for this reason, because you're very intentional. You want to do things for yourself, for meaning. You're chasing meaning, I would say. But at the same time also, you have to keep the thing moving because you want to become better as an individual, right? So I think that is like the constant battle even I face as well, which is what is next. Honestly, I think there is no right answer for it. There is nothing that you can. There is no genie that comes out and say, "Hey, yo, okay, this is the path. Go there."
Yeah, there's a motivational issue here too, and I feel this, and you probably feel this too. Like if you just want to build because you enjoy building, you still need a motivation to do it, right? You still need a reason to commit that hour instead of playing with your kids, or hanging out with your partner, or going for a walk and just enjoying the beautiful world that we live in, right? There are many things you could be doing instead of coding yet another feature for a product. There's
Right.
a lot.
Yeah.
And the hard part is, for me, much of the motivation, or at least used to be, that other people already did it and they became successful, right? Like whenever I see people like Peter Levels, these indie hackers that have accomplished so much, I
Right.
have to actively suppress this longing to be like Peter, right? Because I know, first off, nobody can be like Peter.
Yeah.
Peter is very special in many ways, right? He's a great guy. He has just a sense for things, that he also has a sense to communicate them. He is Peter, and nobody can be Peter, or Danny Postma, or Thibaut, or all these wonderful other people in our community that share that journey and that we know as like the celebrity indie hackers, right? Or even established SaaS founders, Rob Walling, people that have this massive impact, social and entrepreneurial impact, and had for decades on the community. And whenever I see them, I kind of slightly compare myself to where they are. And then I have to actively suppress the comparison, because a lot of my past self, and still some of my current self, draws motivation from that comparison. I think a lot of founders have that, right? A lot of people want to be as good as person X, or even better than person X. And you only really get to see these people at their best most of the time. Maybe not Peter. Peter's also sharing the stuff that doesn't work because he's a good builder in public. But most of the people that we see being successful, we only see the successful part and we compare ourselves to that. And that causes a lot of pain, a lot of harm to our own journey. So I try to suppress that part. But then the question is, well, where do I get my motivation from if it's not from somebody else's success? Right? And that's the hard part, particularly if you are like an introvert, if you don't like talking to people, if you don't like pushing stuff out there for other people to latch onto, because that quickly becomes the void. It becomes the place where nobody interacts with you, because it's not the kind of if you build it they will come. That doesn't work, right? So you have to push information about your work and your interests out there. And if you struggle with that, then you don't have these relationships that can foster motivation. So I don't really have a good answer to this, but I can tell you that I struggle with this a lot. And meaning comes from personal interactions. So I push myself to communicate with people, to talk to the people I want to help, the people I want to serve. And that often replaces the stars that I would follow otherwise. So just real people that have real issues. Maybe that is the answer for this.
I think, that I think the struggle is the answer, Arvid.
Yeah, that also is maybe the case. Yeah,
because
constant reflection.
Because you don't have a solution, you constantly kind of go back and forth in that loop. What is the motivation? I should not compare. Why should I do this? I am good enough. So that battle is good, and it can be like, if it is not balanced, then comes the messy part. But if you're really good at balancing things, I think the struggle is the answer, because I kind of am the same boat. I've been very intentional lately. 2024, I've had an amazing 2023. You had an amazing 2023. It's all filled with highs and lows, unexpected things. So after going through all this, I'm like, you know what? Just fuck it. Like it's good that you have motivation, but it's really important to be intentional. And let life unfold itself. Like you can't really scheme these things, right? You can just be in that flow, but you have to put effort, action. It's not about words, like you said. It's about putting into effort and action that exists, that manifests into something, right? I think leaning towards that is much more, at least to me, is more rewarding than planning things, strategizing too much, scheming too much. Like, how can I get my next sponsor? If I get another 10K followers, I get another X dollars. That's definitely good. That hustle is good. But I think, I feel for younger people, it might be like there is a kick to them. But at least, like, you and I, for us, it's you just do things. Like I love the way you said, at this point, you just do things for yourself. I saw one of your tweet about being a solopreneur, right? It's about doing things for yourself, finding people like you. If it is 10 people, it's fine. 100, fine. 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, good.
Yeah, great.
So that bracket increases, but the bracket, it should not be the other way. It should not be like top down, which is,
Yeah.
if I have 1 million, I'll be very happy. That's
Yeah, that's the worst, the wrong way to look at it, the wrong cause effect relationship. That's for sure.
yeah.
And one thing I've noticed in all of this too is being fine with it not working out. Like we were already talking about like software projects that we're currently working on. I think maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, before I even started this whole solopreneurship stuff, I would have been deathly afraid of a thing not working out, like an experiment that I would run. I would spend a lot of time and I would kind of force it to a point where it's a disaster, because if it's not working out and you force it, it's still not going to work, right? But it feels like you're putting in effort and it's completely wasted. I think it both in my writing and in my coding is like, whatever this is, that's what it's going to be. And if nobody cares about it, that is the signal. That is the thing I'm actually looking for, right? If people care about it, that is wonderful, and I get to help them with it. But if 10 people read it and they all tell me I don't care, or if I build something like Podline, right? I'm building a tool for voice messaging for podcasters. I know people use this because there are competitors in the field, and mine is more feature complete, if you can call it that, and cheaper. So with proper marketing and all that in place, that should work. But even if it doesn't, that is an interesting thing, because the whole journey of building it, that is already what I want. Like that's what I say, like building, teaching.
Yes.
Like the building part, it informs the next teaching. And if the teaching is, hey, projects fail, and here's how to recuperate from a failed project, then that building was not in vain, right? So I'm allowing myself to feel less threatened by failure, both in coding and in the writing that I do, the interviews that I do. Maybe some don't work. Maybe some of my solo podcast episode, they are not interesting to anybody. Doesn't matter. It's out there for somebody else to find. And if I help one person just even have a new thought, that's all I want, right? Low expectations again.
Yes.
So I don't set high expectations for success. I set low expectations for everything. Right? It's fine if it fails. It's great if it doesn't. But either way, it's useful.
I think happiness is having low expectations. That's
very much. Yeah, that's really what it is. Yeah.
It is like, in practice, if you just try it with. So I used to be very skeptical about that statement. Like 3-4 years ago, I was thinking like, these guys are crazy. Like people like Naval, and they're like talking about happiness is not having expectation. It's like, that's ridiculous. And I started like, this small experiment about having low expectations about my gateman or my mailman.
Yeah.
Just like very simple, nothing. Or if I go to a restaurant, I have zero expectations. They bring like wrong order or something. That's fine. Then I saw like there is like this kick coming out of me. Whoa, you know what? This is fine. Let's actually, turn it up a little bit. Bigger, and most of my life experience, like you said, no expectations. Best that way. But I think this brings us a great transition to the very interesting topic I want to like unpack with you.
Sure.
After Feedback Panda, you took a good amount of break. You wrote books, you did courses, you tweeted the shit out of it so much. And you started like doing things in public. I'm sure you didn't do that before, right? You saw this very natural, authentic way of yourself expressing yourself in on Twitter and everywhere else. I want to ask this: who do you love the most? It's a very tricky question. Like the builder Arvid, who used to build and who is building right now. Now that you're back, versus the content creator Arvid, who's like constantly writing, constantly creating podcasts, like these interviews. You have solo podcasts for yourself, and you do the courses. It's a ton of content. So 2 questions: who do you love the most? Who's which persona? Number 2 is what did you learn from the builder persona you're implementing in the content creator persona, and vice versa?
Okay. It's hard to answer that like in the binary way without coming up with like a cheat excuse to love both at the same time, right? Like my initial response was I love the Arvid that allows himself to be either of them at any given point. That is kind of my cheat response. But if I had to pick one, I think the most impactful one is still the content creator and writer. Right? I love coding. It's super enjoyable, and it's crazy to make something that didn't exist and now it does. That is like one of the most mind-blowing things you can do as a human. I think like being able to code is to me akin to wizardry. It's magic. It's magic on a level that most other people will not understand, because they might be able to learn it, but hey, Hogwarts is a school, right?
Yep,
like
yep.
you can go to learn magic, like obviously in a fake world, but the idea is that magic is learnable, but it looks like magic if you don't know what it is, and that's what coding is. To be able to, and particularly now with all the AI assisted coding tools, like you can spin up something that does something in 2 days. Like it's bizarre, and then it exists, and you can charge money for it, or you can just run it and have people use it, right? It's incredible how fast we can create products at this point. And I love that. But then again, when I code and I have to debug some random function somewhere because, like there's a semicolon missing, or, whatever these weird minutiae are, it reminds me that every hour that I spent chasing like a misplaced colon or a misplaced space character in my code is all about me. It's all about me getting this solution right. It's all about me figuring out the bug. It's a very selfish Arvid that codes. It's the exact opposite of the writer. The writer Arvid just tries to impact as many other people as possible, maybe through my own experience, and maybe also in a selfish way, because I get to associate myself with the impact that it has, right? I often talk about like selfishness. Like you can still act in your own interest, but do it in a way that benefits other people. Kind of the eventual reciprocity that people eventually want to give back to you. So you give them first and you just wait it out. You see how long it takes them, and then it comes back to you tenfold. Obviously, it comes back stronger. But that's coder is the selfish one. The teacher is the selfless one. And I think in oscillating between these two, I get to be both, right? So I do like the impactful writer more if I had to pick one, but in allowing myself to do whatever I need to do as a selfish human being or as a selfless human being, both are equally enjoyable. And they do inform each other. Thank you for asking this. That's a wonderful question to think about. What does the coder learn from the writer, and what does the writer learn from the coder? I think as I was a coder first, the first transition for me was into writing. And I noticed that writing for humans is really not unlike writing for machines. Like if you coding is writing for machines, right? It's giving instructions to machines so that they execute it. Right?
I love that.
I am of the opinion that every single software engineer, everybody who writes code, is a writer. They just have an audience that is not a human. And the more we get into the whole AI world, where you can't really tell the Turing test doesn't work anymore, and you're not really sure who you're interacting with, I've seen people who work in marketing, who are not coders, starting to think kind of algorithmically. They're starting to think in instructional ways, because now they have ChatGPT, that where if they find the right prompt, ChatGPT is going to do their 4-hour work in like 20 seconds. So they're trying to figure out how to get to the right prompt so they can save 3.5 hours, right? So people are thinking more about how can I instruct the machine in a writerly way, in a way that is like a human expressing something to another human, which is a really interesting intersection here. But from coder to writer was like, how can I give people instructions without making it like explicit, follow these kind of statement things? So I was learning that coding is very determined, right? You're very determinate, if that's a word, where each statement is a truthy or a falsy statement. Do this, then this, then this. There is no way in between. Writing taught me that you could write the same thought in 400 different ways and reach 400 people in different ways as well. There is no clear truth in writing. So instead of trying to find the clear truth in writing, you just choose that this is what you're going to say and hope, or, over time get better at, that people will understand it and be able to integrate it into their knowledge. So the learning for me in becoming a writer was there is no guarantee that what I'm trying to say will be understood the way that I think it. So I have to be precise. I have to color it with as much story and experience as I can. And then maybe people will get it. And if people get it, they will tell me. And if they tell me that they got it, I will keep writing like this. It's an exploratory process. Coding often has a very true false system, or you have a compiler and interpreter or whatever, and you can check if what you say is going to work or not. Doesn't work with writing. But as I became a better writer, it also impacted the way I wrote my code and the way I built my products, because I understand as a writer, people want value first. Like, that's the thing. If you read an article and you read a couple paragraphs in and it's not interesting, it doesn't capture or captivate you, you leave. Right? You don't want to read the thing. You won't want to read the full thing to get the value out of it. If it doesn't hit you in the beginning, you're not going to sustain retention. Usually, look at YouTube videos, right? It starts high and then it just drops off immediately. Same deal. Content creation, right? YouTube, I consider writing as well because I script it, right? That's kind of what it is. So I learned to put value first, and that has impacted the way I build products, software products. I try to get people to the moment of value recognition. There's probably a better name of this, but it's like when you first feel, oh, this is what it's going to help me with, right? When you first log into a thing and you type your first message, or you upload your first file, and bam, it does the thing that takes you an hour, it did it in 2 seconds. That's the moment I want to get to first, as quickly as I can.
I think it's value in writing is equal to the aha moment in product.
Yeah, and I think that these are both aha moments in writing too, right? Like a lot of people, it's like kind of even with Spotify, with music, where the chorus comes first now, where people start their songs with the chorus because it hooks people immediately. The same deal is with writing an article, a tweet, whatever, the hook. And I don't mean this in like a marketing kind of cringy way, but the thing that gets people to already receive something out of it, that's the first thing you should put there. Which is why my writing has changed a lot over time, and my product work also is changing a lot over time. If I cannot provide that hook, that why should you own this? Why should you pay me for this? If I can't put that right there front and center on the landing page even, or in the first page of the dashboard or wherever you get people in your product, if that doesn't happen, then people will churn. So there are many more things, obviously, but I think these are one of the two of the strongest things that I've noticed.
I think those are the core important things, because you have to think from an audience for a content standpoint and users from product standpoint, right? They have so much going on in their lives already. So if they're giving attention, these are the two things that grab people's attention. So
that's right.
Let's go a little bit tactical into that answer of yours, which is, you said value in writing, content creation, and aha moment in product. What are the things that you've experimented with content? Let's talk about the content writer, because that's your recent persona, and I think you're discovering the aha moment, the builder persona, in the next with Podline and everything. So value first, like, what do you say people should do, content creators? How do they get to that stage where like they get the aha moment, the value moment for themselves, or they distribute that to other people?
The trick is, like, for most people who write, that they think they need to have it right the first time. Like when you write a draft, right? When you write an article or a script, and you are of the opinion that you want the value to hit immediately, you like sit there for an hour trying to figure out the best hook, the best line, or whatever. What I do in my writing, it's a very much multi-stage process. Like, I use AudioPen to just dictate my thoughts, and AudioPen takes the transcript and summarizes it. It doesn't even keep the transcript, or it does keep it, but I don't use it. I just use the summary of what I just rambled into my phone for like 30 minutes, and it turns it into a couple interesting paragraphs. That is not my draft, but the outline for my draft. Then I start writing the thing. I just write the article and just really following the outline that I have. And once this first draft is done, then I think, well, here is everything that I wrote about, everything about this topic that I wanted to speak about. How can I find the most valuable thing and just pull it up? How can I reference it in the beginning? How can I like make a little hint that it's going to come, or maybe just put it right in there and say, hey, 80% of people are of the opinion that XYZ, and here is why. right? Like that is how you would pull it up, instead of saying, I did a survey and the results will surprise you. You have to read the whole thing until, like that's not how it works anymore. You have to kind of pull the information up. And the trick is to liberally use AI tooling to get that out of stuff. Like if you have a draft and you don't really know what is the thing that might hook people the most, throw the thing into ChatGPT and ask it what is going to hook people the most. And it's going to tell you, like, from your whole draft or whatever, this section likely has the potential to be the most hooking because, and then it comes up with some random, just hallucinated reason. But I've understood this AI tool, like most LLMs are designed to be as convincing as possible, right? So they check if their answer convinces as many people as it can. So if you then track that back into the decision that it makes about your draft, it will pull out the section where it's convinced that most people would likely find it the most interesting, because that's how it's internally structured as a language model. So I trust ChatGPT to at least highlight, in most cases, the right area where people might be most interesting. And then I just take that and I just pull it up. Either I just copy it right up and I modify the part that is like in the latter part of the draft, or I just take the essence of this and write 2-3 lines to begin with, just to get people right up to speed that this is where we're going to end up, or this is what we're going to get to. So the actual answer to your question is editing. Like, edit your work. Start drafting all the time. Start from just a brain dump, and then edit it into a shape where you can find the value and move it to the front.
I think go ahead.
I
think the best editor is ChatGPT. I'm
that's great.
Right? It's not a creator.
Yeah.
It's someone who can take these insights or information and edits in a way that you can't imagine by yourself, right? Like, I think that's why people are addicted to it. They ask these questions. I think the prompting is something that we give and we get like a better result in the back. You talk a lot about AI tools, and I think, I want to talk about Podline a little later, but let's talk about the content side of yours. How much of your content creation process is driven by AI, and what are the cons? I think the pros we all know. What are the cons that people miss by using it? They should have, you know what, I should have paid attention to it.
The cons, I think, well, I just said most of my process, like from the beginning, that the drafting is AI assisted, right? I have tools that summarize what I say, tools that transcribe what I say, tools that then check and highlight things. Like, there's a lot of deep analysis that I used to do myself that I'm not doing anymore, right? It's not that I record like 30 minutes of myself and then I listen through it again and I allow my thoughts to have room to breathe and room to intersect and maybe bring in new thoughts that I had since I recorded that. No, I just have like a couple paragraphs of a transcript or a summarized transcript, and that's all I have, right? Because the act of analyzing it has been taken over by the LLM. So the risk here, and in each of these steps, it's the same, right? The LLM does some thinking, and that's obviously in quotes here, air quotes, very important. Like, that thinking is not thinking, it's just a reduction of complexity that has some kind of internal judgment in it, right? Like the AI said, this is the most important stuff. That means everything else is not as important. And that judgment is something that I don't get to make anymore. I get the judgment of, is this correct? I get a verification judgment, but I don't get the qualitative judgment. I get like a quantitative judgment. I get to like, give me 5 titles for this episode. I do this a lot, right? When I with every single week I have a podcast episode with a guest. So I just throw it in Otter AI. I think an Otter AI has a ChatGPT thing built in, and I tell it, hey, give me 5 potential titles for this episode, because Otter has the full transcript. It has like split by person, exactly who is saying what. They know exactly what we talked about. It already gives me like little time fragments for clips and all that stuff. Like, Otter has introspection into the conversation. So I ask it, give me the titles. And it gives me 5 titles. 3 of them are complete garbage. 2 of them are kind of okay. And I pick the one that is okayest and I make it better.
Right.
So my judgment is, out of all the things that in my brain I could have dreamt up like from this conversation, I get like 3 shitty versions and 2 kind of nice-ish, right? And then I make a choice.
Yeah.
super reductive. So
Right.
that's the thing. AI usage is hyper reductive, and it keeps you from properly letting the thoughts and the feelings and the concepts grow in your brain as we used to do, right? You read a book, it stays with you after you close it. That is all taken away by AI. So if you are a person, and maybe that's the important part here, that can only do deep work by deep analysis and reflection, and you're not okay with saying like 80-20 doesn't matter, right? If you are somebody who needs the full insight into this, then using AI tools will rob you of an important part of the process. If you're fine with it, if you say working on a deadline, if you have to produce stuff by tomorrow, and you don't want to spend 2 hours thinking about a title, and you say 80-20, fine with me, like 80% effort, what is it, like 20% effort 80% of the time, you know what I mean, like the Pareto principle. If you're okay with that, then AI tools are spectacular. So I guess that's one of the cons that I see. Beside the whole privacy thing, like that may be the other thing, that everything you give to OpenAI is kind of owned by Microsoft now, which makes your content probably fed into the next iteration of ChatGPT. And if you don't want all your thoughts to be accessible, all the things you talk about, all the drafts you have, all the deep questions that you might be asking, right? Like if and there's all this what's the story there? When Google was doing a lot of ads, like ad prediction or like customer targeting and delivering certain ads to certain people, and this has nothing to do with AI. That was really just like stochastical statistical analysis. Often they would present ads about pregnancy products before the women knew they were pregnant to these women, right? Because the inference from the models that they were using was so good at predicting things from the behaviors of people, that they saw a shift and they associated with other shifts of pregnant people, and they would share that with people. Often it's funny for most, but it's disastrous for teenage pregnancies, or for people in very traditional societies where an unexpected pregnancy means social ostracism or something like that, right? There's risk in this. And that is pre-AI. Now with AI, you have a full conversation with a computer about maybe one of your darkest secrets, and it's owned by Microsoft, right? Or whatever AI you currently use. There is a big risk there too, that your thoughts and your just proprietary thoughts that are yours, that you want to maybe turn into something monetizable, are now kind of going into an open system that everybody can use. That's also a big risk that I see.
I think I definitely want to elaborate on that, but what you said is absolutely true. I think AI is here to reduce, right? It's going to do the brainless work and leaving the brain full work, if that's a word, to us humans, so that we enjoy the creative part of it, or we sit on the information that we really makes us rethink and makes us better, right? Talk about the privacy thing. What do you think the solution is? Like, is there a Apple in-house or on-device type you know 2-layer protective thing that needs to be done? Probably there is a startup for that. What do you think about the privacy thing?
I'm going to give you the answer that probably most listeners are really going to hate here. But as a European, as a German, I think regulation is the answer. Like like with the whole USB-C debacle with the chargers and all that stuff, and what is it, the other thing, the privacy, the cookie law and whatnot. People
GDPR or whatever it is. The rules.
GDPR, I think. Yeah, man, so many acronyms. But a lot of people antagonized European Union for kind of pushing this on the world's population. And I see some issues with this in terms of self-determination and all that. But beyond the political of this, the fact that somebody feels responsible for regulating this is a good thing, because we will see widespread abuse of this information if there is no recompense, or if there's no consequence to using it for whatever you want, right? Wasn't it just a couple days ago that OpenAI removed a certain section of their TOS that said ChatGPT is not allowed to be used for warfare or for military use? They removed this, right? Like, It took Google 18 years to
Right.
remove their "Don't be evil" slogan from their properties. They were "Don't be evil" for 18 years.
Mm.
OpenAI is what, like 3-4 years old, and
Yeah.
already they removed "Don't make war with our product"
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
their terms, right? Hearsay. I'm not a legal expert, and I'm not clear if this is exactly what it means, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that was big on Hacker News a couple days ago. So it speeds up the development of these tools. Like GPT-5 is around the corner apparently,
Mhm.
and it's yet another quantum leap better than GPT-4, which is already massive. So if there is no attempt at regulating this, at like blocking certain information from being used as training data,
Mhm.
or from you being able to impact the next iteration of training data by having some kind of I'm allowed to take this out of the training data, like
Mhm.
you have with the DCMA, like the Copyright Millennium Act, and you can
Mhm. Mhm.
strike GitHub repositories and YouTube videos for things,
Yep.
if they're not supposed to be there,
Mhm.
or Google results for that matter. We need this for the training data and the inference data that exists in models like this. I think we
Mm.
need it. Obviously, there should be a discussion around it. My point is, if we don't have a limit or a way to remove it from this data, then the data will eat us. And the companies that do this for profit
Yeah.
will not care about our privacy, because that
Yeah.
is not a profit generator for them. So I guess regulation is one way. Otherwise, obviously, it could also be an ethical impetus
Mm.
from inside the companies. I think
Yep.
Google used to have an ethics in AI segment, which they all let go for some reason. Weird, huh?
Yeah.
And this could also be in the interest of these companies to build the first ethical AI. I think Apple has been doing something with behind the scenes, training their own models. I'm not sure what it's called. It's not weasel, but it's something like this, like some weird little animal, ferret. That's what it's called.
Mm.
There is an AI, an LLM, a model for edge devices, for iPhones or iPads, effectively, where they're building a multimodal large language model that is trained on licensed data only. And that's the magical part. The magical part is not that it's multimodal, which means like it can do video, audio, and text all in one, which is great.
Right.
But the fact that it's trained on data that it's allowed to train on, that is new. And that is the thing that I want to see more of, because I don't think OpenAI cared much. I think a lot of authors found their full books in the training corpus of those models.
Yeah.
They
Because
asked them
it's not.
about
Yeah.
stuff that only the book owner or only a reader of the book would know, and they paraphrased from the book. So, yikes! I would assume that my books are in there as well
Yeah.
at this
Of
point.
course.
And
If you can just upload data, then it's all there, right?
and as much as I don't like it, I kind of like it, because then I can just ask, what would I say, and then it's going to say it. But there's a big risk into ownership. Like if we think that the capitalist model of owning assets is a thing, right? The idea of ownership is something that we care a lot about, then maybe our data should not be freely usable by these companies.
Right. I so I think the regulation stuff is definitely good because it generalizes the whole industry,
Yeah.
right? It's a rule that everybody should follow,
Mhm.
and who doesn't follow, it's like, we have trust issues with them, and we stop using, which
Yeah.
takes down the business. But I do you think is there a way? I'm just brainstorming here.
Mhm.
Sorry for the listeners. Is there a way, like how Apple does on-device encryption, or
Mm.
something that there are two ways that Apple does really well, which I really admire. One
Mhm.
is the on-device encryption, which the voice is we ask Siri something, it's not,
Yeah.
until we give the permission. That's the second bit, the on-device encryption, and number two, the permission. Like,
Mhm.
if I, as an individual, by consent, say that, hey, I'm okay to release all the things I'm interacting with my
Yeah.
phone to Apple,
Yeah.
that's thumbs up. I think they did something with apps as well. Like, this app is asking you location. Do you want to do it once
Yeah.
while you use the app, or forever? So
Yeah.
it's giving me choices. If I choose it, that means and that's like the simplest way to do this. I don't know if ChatGPT or people at OpenAI want to do that,
Mhm.
because I think it's data versus the other things. They need more data to feed in. But uh, do you think there exists a solution in terms of a Chrome extension or something like that, where it encrypts the data so that people feel safe, but yet they can use
I think
ChatGPT?
you're onto something here, but I think it's not going to happen on the service level. I don't think you can, or it has to happen like deeper than the interface level. Like I don't think you can encrypt
Ah,
something on your browser, send it over to ChatGPT, but then it gets decrypted there because it needs to be able to be put into the model and get a response from. I think
uh,
where privacy comes in is on device trained like custom models. I think
right.
this is there's a tendency right now to go to these big models that are all trained on like publicly available data, GPT-4, GPT 3.5, even like the Mistral models and all the other things that you can find on huggingface.co, which is a great website if you're ever
Mhm.
interested in the weird massive amount of models that you can potentially run. They all are effectively publicly available, plus they all say which data sets go into them, so that's kind of
Sure.
nice to look into. But they're public models, right? Everybody can download a copy of this model and run it on their own computer or run it on their
Right.
phone if it fits. There are iPhone apps that allow you
Yeah.
to run the 7 billion parameter model by Mistral, which is a French company that made an open source LLM that is almost as good, if not even better, than ChatGPT 3.5. You can run
Mm.
this on your phone today. It is going to be
Mm.
slower than ChatGPT because it's not running on a massive GPU cluster
Mhm,
with all
mhm.
these fancy graphics cards. It's just running on your phone. But it does infer, like you ask it a questions and 30 seconds later you get the answer. Still, baby steps, but
Yep.
steps, right?
Yep.
So this is a model that is on device, is publicly available. You download it to your device. I think what you're asking is, can we have a model that is not public, but it is made on your device? It
Yes.
is trained on your device, right? It grows with your device and
Yep.
nobody else gets to use it.
Yep.
There is a movement in AI where company-wide models are trained with the information from inside the company, from all the emails that go through the company, from all the memos that fly around, all the data, and from some kind of analytics platforms, whatever, and that goes into a local training for a local but like internal AI system. It's kind of, I don't know, Samsung GPT or like Airbnb GPT or whatever it is.
Right.
For each of these companies, you could train one model that takes all the public or the internal but public information like emails and pulls it all together and then gives you answers towards that. So the answer is private models, like isolated
Mm.
private models. That's the only way you can safely assume that nobody has access to your information, if the only way to access your information is from that device and it does not upload the model anywhere.
Maybe we should build it.
Man, if only, like, you know what, I'm as I'm working with Podline and the little tools that I built around Podline to do marketing and stuff, which are also a very interesting thing,
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
build tools with AI for a tool that uses AI. It's bizarre. As the more I do it, the more I see that you really need to have a lot of money to do this, right? Like, building a SaaS tends to be a pretty cheap thing to do, right?
Yeah.
If you just need a database and a web server or whatever, that
That's it.
doesn't cost you more than like $20 a month if you get like a Hetzner server or something,
Yeah, yeah,
and you
yeah.
just run a full install of whatever there, and you get free Cloudflare and it's encrypted and whatnot. Done, right? You have a local database, a local whatever deployment you have, it's fine, $20. But the moment you want to run inference on any kind of AI model, either you have to use OpenAI's API, which
Mm-hmm.
costs you like a fraction of a cent per use, but you probably have a lot of users, so it costs you a lot of cents, which
Mm-hmm.
adds to dollars, and that becomes a lot of money. Or you have to run the model locally on your computer,
Yeah.
which, if it doesn't have a GPU, is horribly slow. Like
Yeah.
CPU based inference is like 100 times slower than GPU based inference. So
Mm.
it still works kind of. And if you have the time in the backend to process a couple things, you can still do it. But if you want to have a snappy interface, you need to pay. You either need to rent a server with a GPU, or you go to Replicate, or you go and use the OpenAI API for their stuff. There's always money flowing around every time you use AI. So
Mm.
it's hard to build things that require training, which is a very GPU intense thing, to
Mm.
build that in your own backyard. Like if you don't have like a massive gaming computer with like two
Mm-hmm.
gigantic graphics cards in there,
Right.
even that is not going to be fast compared to the servers that you could potentially rent for hundreds of dollars an hour. So it's a
Mm.
money game at this point. It's
I
funny,
think
right? Everybody wants to do AI, but that's the expensive part, funny enough.
Yeah, I think there are the SaaS tools which are wrappers. They're
Yep,
getting a
they
big
they
hang of
work.
it. Yeah, they work. It's easy to build, right? Like uh, you use the OpenAI models, the
And you
APIs.
pass it through, right? You use your OpenAI API key sometimes to put into the wrapper, and the wrapper just does the call for you, but you
Yeah.
still pay for the actual inference or whatever it is, the thing you want from the OpenAI API. Yes, wrappers are wonderful for this. Also makes them risky as a business because they
Mm.
can be easily replaced by
Yep.
somebody that just wraps slightly better. But if you don't build a wrapper, if you build a business that has API calls at its center that are
Right.
not compensated by your user, you have to be horribly careful about how
Mm.
many API calls you do, particularly if you have a freemium model. It's very, very
Tough.
disastrous, right?
Right.
So it can be quite expensive if people don't pay for it. So you have to be careful with this. But as we are getting better at running AI locally on like phones or
Mm-hmm.
edge devices, that's what I call it. Your computer is an edge
Mm-hmm.
device, your
Mm-hmm.
phone is an edge device because it's at the edge of the network.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we get there, technologies emerge that allow us to run them on our local devices. And that means that they will also eventually run on the server more easily without the
Mm.
GPU and all that. But
Mm.
we still are not at a point where it can be completely done just on a server farm. You need expensive hardware for this. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, the train AI for businesses, unless you have the money, obviously, you have the investment or whatever, it's not good for bootstrappers. I don't think that's a bootstrappable business. That's what I would say.
That's what I was about to tell. I think all these companies who are kind of pushing the boundaries further, they
Mhm.
need VC money, right? And
For this, yeah, for sure.
because they're kind of expanding the horizon. Like you said, we're still early. We're in the beginning days, early days. So we should take this discussion to private, probably. Like I'll call you some of the time.
Yeah,
Now
I
let's
think
talk
so.
about. Yeah, I know we're kind of like up the time. I have like a couple of more things to.
Sure.
By the way, for listeners, for the first time ever in my journey as a host, I don't have research. I
Nice.
don't have any papers. My desk is empty. I just came
Awesome.
with an open mind, talking to my friend. Just we're riffraffing here. Talk about Podline. Like, out of all the things you did, like, how did you find the time to build? What
Mm.
ignited you? Like, you know what? You're in a flow. You're hitting home runs all the
Mhm.
time with the content. What made you? I'm not saying stop that, but kind of shifting gears
Mhm.
and say, you know what? Let's build this.
I was talking to two people very recently on my podcast. One was Jack Ellis of Fathom Analytics, and the other guy was Aaron Francis, who runs a screencasting course and works for PlanetScale, which is a database provider. And
Mhm.
both of these guys are Laravel, PHP Laravel experts, or people who love using Laravel as a technology. And in talking to them, I found something that I haven't really found in many other frameworks or web development frameworks, like people that were genuinely kind and excited about their projects, like the technology that they use. And I come from the JavaScript world. It's a very combative world. Like people are very opinionated about like React or Vue.js or Svelte or whatever you need, like the newest kind of framework, newest kind of tech, Node.js or Dino or whatever, right? There's a lot of fighting. And it felt like that particular world, that the PHP Laravel framework world, did not have this as much. And I was surprised by this because I remember PHP from back in the early 2000s as a fairly combative landscape. But apparently, it has evolved quite to a point where a really cool framework came out of it with an amazing ecosystem. Like, I did not expect to find not only a great framework, which is something that you use in coding just to set up the basics, but to find a plugin and extension ecosystem that was also maintained by the people who were building the framework. Like the Laravel community around Taylor Otwell and the business of Laravel is incredible. Like I just saw amazing people talking about it. So I thought, I'm gonna give this a try. I'm gonna build a little
Mm.
project. What should I do? And I had a backlog of ideas that I wanted to build once I felt the need to build again. And Podline has always been like it, one of them. Right, always been on my mind as one of these projects because I thought, I used the competitor for this, which I think is called SpeakPipe, for a couple times, and I see it being used on Seth Godin's podcast, and I see it being used on other podcasts. In fact, I did some competitor research. I found it being used on over 4,000 websites. And I was like, if this particular product, which is one of many, is used by thousands of people, most of which are podcasts, maybe I can build one that is better, because I wanted a better one than that. It wasn't customizable, didn't have themes, had an interface that looked like it was from the 90s. I just wanted something that, more, that is more visually appealing and had more functionality. None of the tools that I found had transcription or had summarization. And I wanted, if I get a message, to get a summary. I wanted to see like, oh yeah, Sharath gave you a call, a talk for 3 minutes, but there's really one thing you wanted to talk about, and it's this, right? That's the thing I want to see in the top of my email. I don't want to listen to 3 minutes of audio. I mean, I would listen to 3 minutes of you, but if it's somebody that I don't know and they have an offer for me or they have a question, why not get to the point? So I wanted to build something like this. Hence, Podline came to be, because I wanted to see, can I use this technology? And I know in my book, I talk about not using new technology for new projects. If you're starting out, I guess this was more of a side project than anything else. I wanted to see, can I build a Laravel thing? How easy is it to use it? Right. And then Podline was, well, this is the thing that is easy to build, easily scoped. It's a voice messaging system. All I need is capture audio data, put it in the database, play it, summarize it, done. Right? Podline is factually feature complete as of last week or so when I finished theming. So now it's a little project that I wanted to build, and I wanted to explore a new tech, and that's how it came to be.
I think I heard a lot of people say, or they claim that most of their ideas are born from out of curiosity. And I think for the first time, your curiosity is not about the idea, but about technology. It's like, can I build, or can I use this technology to build something? Right?
Yes.
I love that. And what are the things that you've, apart from technology, which is new to you, from FeedbackPanda days to now, what is something that you're doing completely radically different?
This time I'm actually using like AI tools to do the heavy lifting. Like for the main feature of this thing is not voice, like getting audio data from a browser. There are thousands of plugins that record audio data through a browser. But to have it automatically transcribed and summarized in the background, I've never done anything like this before. And without an AI system, without like literally 2 big LLM systems running on that server, doing manual inference on a CPU, like the slowest possible way, without that technology, I don't think I could do this. Like, I don't think I could summarize a 3-minute audio clip into 2 sentences. I just couldn't. I couldn't build that, right? I would have to build my own machine learning system and then I don't know what I would do. I could probably get transcription done. Not sure how I would do that without Whisper, like OpenAI's free audio transcription LLM system. But I would have no idea how to do this without using external services. But now I get to do this on my server. Like, it's an encapsulated system that doesn't need any external things to function, to provide massive value. So that's new. It's new to use AI as a backend system, not just as a service, but to have it as part of my backend. And obviously, it's not optimal. Like, it's much easier to send an API request to OpenAI for this for like 4/10 of a cent or whatever, but I get to do it 10 times as slow for free. That's really cool. Like, I would everybody who works with AI, try to set it up locally. See how and if you can, because all those models you use, like ChatGPT 3.5 or whatever, there are equivalents for them out there that you can just install locally using, I think it's called llama.cpp, LLAMA.cpp. That is the tool that runs things like Mistral or other fully featured, like massive gigabytes in size, living in the RAM LLMs. You can run them locally, and you can send a message to them, and they send you a reply back, and it costs you nothing but RAM and electricity. Try that. Try seeing what you can do with something that runs on your computer for free. Your local computer, like if you have a Mac Studio or Mac Mini or whatever, it have a GPU, it's going to be even faster if you compile it right. But you can have this magical thing that did not exist a year ago, that we were not aware of, like in 2022 or whatever, where it was just an inkling, right? Where just the most nerdiest of nerds knew about this. That thing can now live on your computer, and you can run it every single hour. Like you can ask questions all the time. I actually, and I'm gonna be quick about this. I
Yeah,
built a
go
little
ahead.
tool for Podline to enable me to do marketing, because the idea is I have this list of all these companies that have the competitors' products. They all have podcasts, right? So
Right.
what do I want to do? Well, I want to know what their podcast is about. What kind of image, what thumbnail do they have? What
Right.
colors do they use? So I can automatically generate
Mm.
a theme for Podline, automatically generate their Podline landing page, and then send them an email with, hey, I made this for you. Want to use it? It's free,
Mm.
right? That's what
Yeah.
I want to do. And for that, I need to know what podcasts are out there, what their themes are, how I
Yeah.
should speak to them, and what their images are. So I built a little tool 2 days ago that effectively uses the podcastindex.org API to pull
Mm-hmm.
in the most recent releases of all podcasts everywhere. And then
Wow.
it downloads the latest episode. It downloads the information about the podcast. It transcribes the latest episode on my computer, and it puts the transcript in a database. And now I can score each episode as to, do they talk about voice messaging? Do they talk about ask people to send in a message? Do they ask people to go to a
Right.
SpeakPipe or a competitor to put a message in? And I get all podcasts everywhere. Like this computer right next to me has been transcribing as we were speaking for this whole hour. I think like
Wow.
a couple hundred episodes of podcasts to maybe hit one where they talk about the thing that I need. So this
And
little
then,
tool is becoming a whole business in itself, potentially, right?
mm,
Because if I can ask it, did
anybody can
anybody
ask
mention
you.
SpeakPipe?
Yeah.
Well, then other people can ask it, did they mention my brand? Did they
Yeah.
mention something else? Like it's so funny how entrepreneurship works. Like
Yes.
you build something that is kind of scoped, but you need something to market it, and that becomes a whole new thing. And all of this is running locally. Like this is a Mac Studio, pretty sizable, 64 gigabytes of RAM with a integrated GPU or whatever. This can transcribe an hour of audio in a
Wow.
minute
Wow.
on its GPU. So I'm just
Wow.
throwing audio at it. Like it's at 60 hours in an hour, like 60 hours of audio in 1 hour, and it's running 24/7 because and every 10 minutes it goes to the API, fetches the most recent episodes that were released everywhere, and just picks a
Mm.
couple of them and integrates it into the system. I have so much fun building, as you can probably tell.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it enables me to build something cool, learn through the process, and the whole thing with Laravel is the same, right? I now learned that I can, and not just me, anybody can, who's a coder, set up a functioning business of a product in 2 days. Install Laravel, install Spark, install all the little plugins that you need to get Stripe integrated, to get users, customers integrated, to get started, and then you have a fully functioning
Wow.
template, and you just integrate whatever you need to do to actually provide the value. 2 days, not more. Like you don't need more time than that. And that
Wow.
just blows my mind. And that's what I love about being a builder right now. I get to play with these little things. The AI
I
will.
I think for people who are listening, I'm just telling this exactly for you. I am seeing a little kid right now talking to me
Yep.
whose eyes are wide. I have a son who is 2.5 year old. You are like him, Arvid. You're like wide. Whenever he finds an interesting toy, he loves his whites. His eyes goes like like a size of a moon. You're like that. You're like
Yep.
a
I
kid in
feel
the
like it.
candy store playing with it, and I love this.
Mhm.
I think uh, it's contagious, and now I'm feeling the joy that I have to do something like
Yeah.
this, right? That gives me that that feeling. I'm so happy for you.
Oh,
I
thank
feel
you.
I love this side of you,
Mhm.
which I always admired from the Feedback Panda days, and
Mhm.
but yeah, the content side, of course, you're a great teacher. You're a professor. You with kindness, right? Like you don't belt people, but you say, hey, this is the way to.
Yep.
But I think I want to end this conversation on that note, because you
Wow.
feel like my son right now,
Aw.
like
I This
so
is so
happy.
sweet. I appreciate that so much, and I feel thank you. That's all I want to say. Thank you for that, because I that the fact that I get to do this is already magical. Like I said, it's wizardry, right? I feel honestly, I always thought I regretted not getting my Hogwarts letter, like as a wizard, but I did it, and it was my first computer. It allowed me to get into a world where I can make
Right.
magic happen, and I get to do this in front of people, and I get to share it with them, and they now get to do it as well. Like, could this be more exciting? I don't know. I don't think so. Right? It feels like we are on the verge of something much, much bigger with the whole AI singularity conversation, which we probably shouldn't get into because that's going to take another hour. But to be able to contribute a little bit to making the world a better place, more usable place, a more it's not even profit oriented, just a more abundant place for people, and I get to do this and share this joy with others. I feel very happy about that.
Yeah, I think so. You talk a lot about tactical stuff, and I haven't seen some of the stuff you mentioned in your tweets. Probably, I'm sure that you're going to record an episode on Friday about this particular conversation we had just in the last 5 minutes. I'm excited to tune in, even though I'm not a coder. I just want to listen to you talk about with joy. Yeah. So I think talk about this more often, Arvid. I think not about the coding. I mean, it involves coding, but I think that the passion is what I feel. You should
thanks for pushing me a little bit into that direction. I've been moving more towards that. Like my podcast is 2 episodes a week. One is the interview where it's all about like concepts and tangible advice from that other expert. And I used to be very focused on like think pieces on Fridays, but I found most recently I just talk more about my projects and the little things that I do, and that also resonates with people on a different level. Right? They already get the big picture stuff from the interviews, and why not spend it just sharing my journey? That's ultimately building in public, right? It's not just concepts, but like in the trenches. I don't like the phrase, but like at work, behind the scenes stuff. That's what really connects with people.
That's you showing the path. And I'm sorry I didn't wear Brilliant Public shirt I got from you. It's somewhere stuck in the boxes. I'm sure probably
Dude, next time we talk.
Probably I'll wear it on your show when I come.
That's right. I have to. If you can find it, you only have a couple days.
yes, I will.
That's cool.
But this has been a blast, and I think I really enjoyed just talking out, in the open with you, and appreciate you for joining the second time.
It is.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's always an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You are so kind, and you have such an interesting way of extracting like the emotional truth from things. I think you're great at that. So I really appreciate you talking to me. That was wonderful.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's a wrap for today. I'll be back with another amazing guest like Arvid. And stay tuned. I want to try this experiment with others as well. I feel like it might work. We'll see. But stay tuned, stay healthy, stay positive, do your thing. You're going to be awesome. Cheers.